welcome, sir. A happy morning to you, sir.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you so much.
Good morning, sir. I'm Rekha here.
Good morning, Ma. Yeah. How are you?
Fine, sir.
Good,
How
good.
about you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yes, sir.
Sir, meet
Good morning,
our
sir.
Secretary Shamla ma'am, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning, ma'am.
Warm welcome to you, sir. Thanks for
Thank
accepting
you.
our invitation and being with us as resource person today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Shamla ma'am, start ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದಾ 10:30 ಆಯ್ತು. ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್?
Only 1 minute we will just wait because ಈಗ 10:30 ಆಗಿದೆ. Delegates join ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಓಕೆ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್.
ಒಂದ್ ನಿಮಿಷ ಕಾಯೋಣ.
ಹಾ, ಸರಿ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್, ಆಯ್ತು.
Video position ಸರಿ ಇದೆಯಲ್ವಾ?
Yes, sir.
ಎಸ್ ಸರ್.
Smita, I think we can start now.
ಹಾ, ಎಸ್ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್. ರೇಖಾ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್, ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ?
Okay. Good morning, one and all. With great joy and immense pleasure, I, Rekha HG, Assistant Professor of History, takes a proud privilege to extend a warm greetings for the 7 days International Virtual FDP program in Humanities entitled Contemporary Research Methodologies in Humanities, organized by the Humanity Forum, and today's program is hosted by the Department of History, GFGC, Vijayanagar, Bangalore. So I'll start with the statement given by the great historian, I think Italian historian, he says, all history is a contemporary history. I am speaking this with regarding today's program is based on the contemporary research methodology. And I'm taking one particular statement by a great historian by name, I think Benedetto Croce, an Italian historian. He says, all history is a contemporary history. According to him, whatever the history is there so far in the mankind are all contemporary histories, he means to say, and he justifies that by giving different examples. I will quote few examples on my own to say what his statement is regarding contemporary history. If we take an example of Kalinga battle for during the Ashokan period, it is a contemporary history for the period of the Ashokan period. They are contemporary to that particular time. They were there and they witnessed the war. So it is a contemporary history for the Ashokan period. Likewise, coming to the medieval era, we have second battle of Panipat fought by Akbar Enumu in the year 1556. That becomes the contemporary history of that particular period because they have witnessed this particular history. And coming back, our period, we have witnessed one war, I think in the year 1999 called Kargil War. We were all eyewitness to this war because we could see directly from the TV. We watched the live show of the war, Kargil War in the year 1999. So that is a contemporary history for us. So because it happened in our times. So all history is contemporary period. But we have the technology has been advanced so much in the present day 1999, we could watch it as a live story, live history, we could see that. So the author tells, oh, all history is a contemporary history from our point of view, from my point, my date, my period. I classify the history as the ancient, medieval, modern, and contemporary history. Coming back to the word contemporary history, we call contemporary word from the day we take it as 1945 onwards. The era of Cold War down till now, we call it as a contemporary period. So this contemporary the eras or those contemporary eras have left a rich legacy in this contemporary era for us to reconstruct the history of the old, what you call monuments and the literature that we have richly, they have given the legacy for us to reconstruct the history in the contemporary period. Coming back to history, we have both methodology of history, contemporary methodology in history that we have is both qualitative and quantitative. When we say qualitative, it is a conceptual method which includes narrative historical records. Coming back to quantitative, we make use of the numerical data. We make use of SPSS, statistics, computer tools. Mostly we make use of this data or statistics when we are reading the doing research in the economic history, or we are working on the historical tourism. So we need to collect data and we rely on the computer and other software. So our college has a great research center. So research activities are conducted in our college, and it is we have so many subjects and so many research area in our college. To promote this research zeal, our college has organized this 7 days FDP program, International FDP, to cater the research needs of the delegates. So we are here to cater the research needs for the delegates today. So delegates can make the best use of the resources that we have in our college. So this FDP constitutes 7 high-level profile or the high-level talks that we have from the resource persons. 7 resource persons are highly talented, and we have those resource persons here. So I cherish these high-profile talks as the scholarly pearls. We have already received 4 scholarly pearls, and today we are receiving the 5th scholarly pearl given by our resource person, Professor Ashwata Narayan sir. So I have to speak few words because I am a student and I've been receiving guidance during my research days from sir. And being a student, I am very fortunate today to listen to his talks. Many days past that I listened to him. So in the process, when I was doing the research, he had helped me a lot during my research days. He taught me the basic concepts of how to start my research. He was just telling me that little concept which I had been deviated, he made me to correct myself, and he gave me the basic thought in my research, even though he is not my research guide. And always he used to tell us to read the literature. Whenever we go and ask him, he says, come back reading literature. So he says that we should try to see the history, even from the research or literature perspective. Also, we need to see the history. He had also assured me, or he told me when I was doing my research, he told me that before starting the narrative epics, first I should learn the local narratives. So I have a lot to say about you, but due to the time constraint, I have to limit myself to this extent. I am greatly fortunate sir is there today for today's function. So now I request Dr. Smita M. Bavikatti, HOD and Assistant Professor, Department of History, to welcome the gathering and introducing the guest.
Thank you, Rekha madam. Good morning, one and all. Research is a way of thinking. Research plays a pivotal role in the systematic development of a new knowledge. It is central to effectiveness of all higher education. One of the core missions of higher education is to advance, create, and disseminate knowledge through research and provide service to the community. In this context, we, the Humanities Forum, GFGC Vijayanagar, Bengaluru, organizing 7 days International FDP on contemporary research methodologies in humanities. We are in the 5th day of this journey, and it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all to this FDP program. I, Dr. Smita M. Bavikatti, Head of the Department of History, to speak a few thoughts about the history and postmodernism. Postmodernism was originally a reaction to the modernism. Postmodernity is a derivative referring to non-art aspects of history that were influenced by the new movement, namely developments in society, economy, and culture since the 1960s. When the idea of reaction or rejection of modernism was borrowed by the other fields, it became synonymous in some context with postmodernity. The term is closely linked with post-structuralism. With this thought, now it gives me an immense pleasure to welcome today's resource person, Dr. Ashwath Narayan sir. He is a professor in the Department of History, Bangalore University, Bangalore. A warm, hearty welcome to you, sir. I welcome our beloved principal, sir, Dr. Chandrasekhara B., chief patron of this FDP program, whose constant support and guidance makes us to lead with many such endeavors. Actually, he is driving the car. He's on the way to the college. Welcome you, sir. I extend a warm welcome to Dr. Shubha, IQSC coordinator of our college and head of the Department of Botany. Welcome you, ma'am. I extend a warm welcome to all the delegates and participants across the country to this FDP program. I would like to welcome Professor Shailaja MG, head of the Department of Economics and also convener of Humanities Forum. I welcome you, ma'am. I would like to welcome Dr. Suma, Associate Professor, PG Coordinator of Kannada Department, whose constant support and inspiration in designing the theme and the program of this FDP. I welcome you, ma'am. I extend a warm welcome to the organizing secretaries of this FDP, Dr. Shamla B., PG Coordinator, Department of Economics, and Professor Hemlata, Department of English. A hearty welcome to you, ma'am. I extend a warm and hearty welcome to all the delegates, a wholehearted welcome to the conveners of this FDP program and technical committee members, organizing committee members of this program. I also extend a warm welcome to the teaching and non-teaching faculty of our college. Now, I would like to introduce our resource person of this session, Professor Ashwath Narayan sir. Dr. Ashwath Narayan sir is a professor in the Department of History, Bangalore University, and a favorite teacher of all the students in the department. Being a gentleman, he is a man of discipline and perfection. I am proud to say that I am his student while pursuing my MA degree, and he was my guide in my MPhil degree. What makes me proud is that I learned the research method under his guidance. It is fortunate that I had the opportunity to introduce my teacher in this occasion. Well, to say a few words about his career, sir is graduated with a MA from Bangalore University in 1983, and MPhil in 1985, and a PhD in 1995 from Bangalore University. He has joined the Bangalore University in 1986 and promoted to Reader in 1999 and Professor in 2007. He has served as a chairperson of the Department of History, Bangalore University since 2019. With over 36 years of teaching experience, he has guided 10 PhD and 16 MPhil research students. His interested subjects in the fields of research are modern history, culture, social struggle movements, including political history of Karnataka, Kannada literature, and history. He has also worked on the textbook forum committees of the Education Department, Karnataka government, introducing object history to the school students. Sir has written many books and published many books. To name a few: Mysuru Charitre, Samshodhana Hejjegalu, Legitimizing Political Power, Social Reform Movements in Princely Mysore, Charitre Lekana Parampare, Charitre Samshodhana Vidhana, and many more. And also, he was also the editor of Kannadod Bhavisida Janapadam work. Sir has published his articles in many prestigious journals at state, national, and international level. To name a few: Social Reform, Indian Experience, Social Reform Movements in Colonial Mysore and Archival Retrieval, Samshodhana Nelegalalli Mysuru Charitre, and many more. He has also presented many research articles in various seminars, symposium, workshops, and conferences. He served as the member of the Academic Council of Bangalore University from 2000 to 2001, member of LIC team, member of National Council for Teacher Education, Bangalore in 2006, LIC member of Sri Krishna Devaraya University, Vijayanagar, Bellary in 2004. Director of Bangalore University Employees Credit Cooperative Society from 2004 to 14. He has also served as a board member of Examiner, as a member of question paper preparation team, as an evaluator, and as a custodian. Dear participants, we are proud to have an eminent scholar, Professor Ashwath Narayan sir, today, who is going to speak about history and postmodernism. I wholeheartedly welcome you, sir, on this occasion to share your views in the faculty development program. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Smita.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's my privilege to thank the principal of the college, Sri Dr. Chandrasekhar, a good friend of mine, Dr. Smita, Rekha, and all other colleagues of Vijayanagar College, and the participants who are here present. The topic is history and postmodernism. I was just thinking about how to begin my lecture. Then immediately an experience struck my mind that I felt compelled to share with this august audience. In a lighter tone, it looks like a joke, but then I don't know whether it could be taken seriously too. It so happened that I was invited to give a lecture in a workshop on research methodology organized by Indian Council of Historical Research, where I was speaking on the relevance of citations in history research. And at the beginning of my lecture, I asked a gentleman, a student, also I should add here that the participants were basically researchers from many universities in South India. So therefore, I was asking a researcher or the group of researchers that how do they define the concept of thesis? I asked them, how do you define a thesis or the concept of thesis? There was a silence for some time, later followed by a gentleman from one of the Andhra universities. He stood up and he started telling it in Telugu. Sir, thesis ante vere book ninka thesis ogdava yesete thesis sir. That was the expression that gentleman expressed. Fortunately, I could understand Telugu and I could make out what he was trying to speak. But here, the non-Telugu audience may not be able to understand what I'm trying to, share. The quote that I heard from that particular, research student. That means, he was saying, taking out the extracts from different sources and putting it in one place and making a thesis is a thesis. So that is the broad meaning of the expression of that particular, gentleman. Now I leave it at that because we may come back to that, statement whether it's a serious of a, issue or something that we should ignore. I don't know. I leave it to you because what's been happening in our universities, in a way, he reflected is my opinion. Now coming to today's lecture, history and postmodernism. Now I begin because the title itself is history and postmodernism. It is not postmodernism and history. So therefore, I feel that it is quite justified to start, an understanding of history and then later switch over to postmodernism and then see how history and postmodernism, are connected or have been reflected each other. So at the beginning, I would like to bring in a few fundamental or the foundational, notions of history. I take a quote from UGC model curriculum, where at the beginning it is stated that the past remains constant, but writings about the past change. It's a very important and significant statement about history. The past remains constant, but the writings about the past change. Now, even to this day, we are seeing researchers getting engaged with the ancient history, medieval history, or the history of different periods, why they're constantly engaged with ancient or the prehistoric period or the medieval period. Why is that? Because the history, if you take in the sense of time, that remains constant, but then the writings keep changing, and as writings keep changing, perceptions of the past also get changed. So this is one of the important things that we need to understand about the history. Secondly, it's been one of my favorite quotes that T.S. Eliot, one of the celebrated writers, literatures of the 20th century, English literature, he in the fourth quartet makes very, very interesting a statement or a philosophical expression that time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future and time future contained in the time past. It's a wonderful philosophical statement. Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future and time future contained in the time past. This is the statement, a philosophical statement by T.S. Eliot. See how the past, present, and the future are connected. It's not that future, it's unseen. Yes, it's not certain for us, but then whatever that emerges as future, it has all the links to the present and the past. So it's a very interesting statement to understand the epistemological nature of history as a philosophy. Then we need to understand another, maybe it's a strength and also weakness of history, that what is history ultimately? What is written as history is history, but there is history outside this writing. This is what we need to understand. Many times we feel that when we read a textbook or when we read a book on a particular theme, we feel yes, we have come to know all about that particular period, ancient period. Now, if you take any good book on ancient period, ancient India, then after reading that, we may feel that yes, now we know ancient history or the history of ancient India. It's not so, because there is a limitation. What is that limitation? What is written as history has become history for us, but there is much more which is outside this written form, which we need to understand as the limitation of history as a discipline. So this is another important thing. Now, E.H. Khan, one of the very important historians, and who published a small book, very small book, What is History? The title of the work is What is History? There, he makes this very interesting statement. That statement is, the facts of history never come to us pure. The facts of history never come to us pure, since they do not and cannot exist in pure form. They are always refracted through the mind of the recorder. They are always refracted through the mind of the recorder. If follows that when we take up a work of history, our first concern should be not with the facts which it contains, but with the historian who wrote it. Therefore, there is an issue here. Yes, there are facts. There is past. When we take up a work of history to read, first we should be concerned about the person who has written that, the credibility of the person, what matters, in research in general, and more so in historical research, because what is that we are doing in history? We are trying to decode something we have not seen, something we have not heard, so something that is obscure to us. So therefore, we need to understand this limitation, that the credibility of the researcher is more important when we consider the work of history. So all these things are quite important to understand the nature of history. Now, how did this tradition start. When this tradition start, I don't want to go into details. Into that it's a different domain altogether. But what started as the oral bardic tradition, later got crystallized, manifested, and took different dimensions in the form of writing and in several other forms. So therefore, there is a beginning to the history as an enterprise. And how it began? It began with the oral bardic tradition. Even to this day, we are quite strong in our oral traditions than in writing tradition. Now, since we are talking about the postmodernism today, what is significant for us to understand is how the West understood history, how the European mind understood the history, how the European minds understood history, because postmodernism is something, it critiqued the European mind. What the European mind produced was critiqued by the postmodernists. So in that sense, it's very important for us to know what happened in Europe. We need to understand, or we must admit that history as a discipline is the product of the West. History as a discipline in quotes. Yes, if you ask me, did Indians not know history? Yes, we knew history. But as a discipline, it certainly is the product of the Western mind. You know that generally we consider Herodotus as the father of history, Thucydides, and later on that a mighty tradition continues. So starting from the Greco-Roman tradition, it developed over a period of time. Now there are different several stages in the development of historical writing. But since our topic today is postmodernism, I just come to the Renaissance period. The Renaissance, because Renaissance and the post-Renaissance developments have significantly related to the postmodernist critique. So therefore, I begin from the the Renaissance period. Now, what happened in Renaissance? In the 14th century, when the Renaissance movement originated in Europe, all of a sudden, life appeared to be quite different. Society appeared to be quite different, and man and his space became too central to everything in the ecosystem. This is a very significant thing that we need to understand. Up till then, man was there, but man had not become so central to the ecosystem. But in the Renaissance period, the man became too central to everything, and his space became very important, for him. And now in the Renaissance period, another important thing that history was liberated from the tradition. So what was the tradition being practiced by the communities across the globe now being was liberated, due to the new perceptions that were developed during the Renaissance. We all know that it was an attempt to encounter with the Greco-Roman classical traditions that produced new forms of knowledge, new way of understanding society, new way of conceiving the human being and centrality of the human being. All that is started afresh during this period. This is a very, very significant step or a stage in the human development which we should be concerned with, because the postmodernist discourse, in a way, it reflects critically about this kind of a development. This gave way. This gave way for the new movements. Now, what was the next movement that we see in Europe? It was the scientific revolution. That was a very significant development that we see over there. So what was happening here in the scientific revolution, started happening 17th century and onwards. Bacon, Da Vinci, Copernicus, they started, looking at the universe with different perspectives. They were trying to decode the universe, with a different language, the different idioms. So the 17th century and onwards, the scientific revolution, it changed the perception of man towards the nature. It changed the perception of man himself, because there were lots of researches happening in the physical sciences, and later even biological sciences also witnessed, which I'll come to later. So these changes, what was happening in the scientific field, tremendously influenced the way how societies were understood. We need to understand at this juncture that what was happening in science was not just confined to science, it was also having its bearing on the social phenomena. The intellectuals of the period, they were also trying to understand the world, the society, the nature, relationship, everything in the light of the scientific discoveries. So in that sense, there is a very close relationship between the scientific revolution and what was happening in historical research. One of the very important developments of the period, that reason became too central to human beings. Reasoning became too central to human beings, and the self became very important to human beings. So the reasoning and the self were very, very important developments during this period. And Rene Descartes, we are familiar, particularly history students, we are familiar with the Cartesian theory of history. Rene Descartes, Descartes is a very, very important and a significant thinker as far as history is concerned. Descartes wrote, which I found very interesting, a man's body may be illusory. A man's body may be illusory. Sense perceptions might be wrong, but thought is different. And the result was saying, I think, therefore I am. If man doesn't have this faculty, then he does not exist at all. It is there as a faculty. It has the capacity to think, to reason out. Therefore, I exist. So what a revolutionary shift that we find, that I think, therefore I am. So it was so important, a revelation, that it had a very deep impact on the history writing. Okay. Now, Enlightenment period. Enlightenment period of the 18th century. This is another significant, period. Why I'm bringing all these things, because when I come to postmodernism, they, reflect only these things, the claims of these periods, the claims of the Renaissance, the claims of the Enlightenment, the claims of the scientific revolution. So they critically question the claims of these people. Now, what was happening in the Enlightenment period? I bring in a statement by Condorcet, Marquis de Condorcet, Condorcet. Condorcet, he writes, freeing human beings. Okay, that was the theme, and that he was writing, when the sun shines only on free human beings who recognize no other master but their own reason, when tyrants and slaves, priests and benighted or hypocritical minions exist only in the history books and theater. Look at the kind of claim that he makes. When the sun shines only on free human beings who recognize no other master but their reason. Reason became too central here. When tyrants, slaves, priests, their benighted or hypocritical minions exist only in the history books and theater. So therefore, reason has the capacity to decode everything, and he put reason as at the center of the entire enlightenment discourse, enlightenment thought process. And this enlightenment period, or the philosophy of enlightenment, believed in the capacity of science and reason to bring about revolutionary changes in the society. Look at the claim of this enlightenment period. It believed that the capacity of science, yes, it had the capacity of the science has the capacity, the reason has the capacity to bring fundamental changes in the society. Another claim that enlightenment, which advocated reason, is the liberating agency for human being. Why he was saying, why it was said? Because man, particularly Europeans, they were under the clutches of the church. Now, this enlightenment thinking or emphasis of the enlightenment on the reason, it said, now people are getting liberated from the clutches of the church. Okay, so another important development of the enlightenment philosophy is that they never believed in facts, they believed in interpretations. So interpretations became more significant for them. So that was another important development that you would see here. Okay, and another important theoretical proposition of enlightenment philosophy was that they never believed in the cyclical theory of history. Now history started moving from cyclical to linear. This linear movement was something they believed how a society was moving. And another significant aspect of this philosophy was that it advocated generalizations. It advocated generalizations. In the light of this, a number of works started coming out on history. A number of works started coming out on history, and these works may be related to history or politics or economics or education. They all in a way reflected this philosophy of enlightenment, and very particularly how this enlightenment movement or enlightenment philosophy made deep impact on history is something which we should be concerned about, because basically it's a lecture on history. Number one, it started secularizing history. The moment they started distancing from the church, it was nothing but secularizing the process of human relationship. And also the generalization of the laws had a deep bearing on history writing. Because these people who were writing history, they were all influenced by these various philosophical propositions of the Enlightenment period. Also, they started writing universal history. They no more confined to only to Europe. Now their vision started becoming broader and broader, and Europe started including the non-European continents. In a way, you would see how geographical discoveries started encapsulating the different and far off places. into the European stretches, that gets reflected here, and therefore it had an impact on the thinking process of historians who now conceived history not as the history of Europe or the history of European people, but the history in the universal sense, that history is related to all human beings. And very significantly, the people who are now had all these elements in their writings were Montesquieu, Voltaire, David Hume, William Robertson, Edward Gibbon. All of them are very, very important names in history. So you would see that there was a huge paradigm shift in terms of understanding the nature, the society, the human beings, which had their deep impact on the way history was written. So this is something significantly we need to notice. And thereafter, again, there were several schools. How these schools took history into different dimensions. They were the Berlin Revolution of 1840s. Then positivism, the Auguste Comte's positivism was something had a very, very deep impact on historical research. Then Annal School, Mark Bloch, Ferdinand Brodel, and then the Marxist school. See, these various schools over a period of time successively extended the frontiers of historical narratives, the frontiers of the historical narratives. And they also extended the philosophical understanding of history in various dimensions. The way Marxists understood history was not the way how Annal School understood. The way Annal School understood was not the way how positivists understood. And the way positivists understood was not the way how the Berlin School or the Rankin School understood history. In fact, there was a competition among the historians to take history to the level of science. I think history students are quite aware of the statement of J.B. Bury, who said, "History is science, no less, no more." How did this statement come to his mind? How did this man make such a wonderful claim that history is science, no more and no more, no less? It came to him because he had the support of the understanding of the scientific, research. And number two, in science, there is a methodology, and even social science and even in historical research, they try to bring in the methodology adopted by science. The only difference was that there was experimentation, and here experimentation was not possible. Other than that, the way empiricism was treated, the way empiricism was put to into certain formulas and to arrive at new conclusions, are all something which were emulated and adopted by the history schools of thought. Particularly, Rankin is very, very significant in that process. Now, modernism, all the result of all this is now man became modern, society became modern, Europe became modern. So modernism now became the the new brand for human existence, a new brand for society. And this modernism, as I told you earlier, and when I was explaining the Enlightenment period, it believed in all the claims of Enlightenment period, that it believed in the power of science, it believed in universality of reason, it believed in unity of humanity and human history, it believed in individual as the creative force of society and history, and it believed in the superiority of the West. This is something, a new addition. Superiority of the West. For them, entire epicenter of intellectuality is there only in Europe, not outside Europe. So superiority based in all aspects and social progress became the central concern, and the progress now became central concern of all European minds. The progress during the this period. Now, what was the result of this progress? What was the result of these scientific advancements? What was the result of this kind of a writing, even in history? They had direct bearing on how Europe extended itself into other frontiers. It expanded itself. It started causing democratic upheavals. It created international markets. It created rapid urbanization. It created growth of mass communication. It created the rise of powerful nations. A new bureaucracy was created, and it created the power blocks. It created the power blocks. So now, if you look at modernism, if you look at the way how the philosophy of modernism was choreographed or manipulated, you would see how Europe, it started extending itself. And in that sense, writing of social science or even history was nothing but legitimizing the political expansionist policy of Europe. The political expansionist policy of Europe. So huge power structures were created there. So with this background, now I'll come to postmodernism. Postmodernism. Now, what is postmodernism? Postmodernism is a phenomenon, a critique of the project of modernity. Yes. Now, the word postmodernism itself does not have any meaning. So we need to understand that. If someone asks me what is postmodernism, I need to only tell them that it's a critical appreciation or a critical condemnation of the modernity. That's all I would say. But if they ask me what exactly is postmodernism, I'm not able to say that. So therefore, the point here is that postmodernism, the term itself does not have any meaning. It is linked to the modernity project, and it's a critique of the modernity project. Now, what is the basic feature of this postmodernism? The basic feature of the postmodernism is loss of faith in modernity, loss of faith in progress, loss of faith in enlightenment rationality. So now we need to link that to our enlightenment claims. Loss of faith in modernity, loss of faith in progress, and loss of faith in enlightenment rationality. Now, Arangere, a philosopher, in his work, Postmodernism and Environmental Crisis. Postmodernism and Environmental Crisis, it's a work. He writes that postmodernism signifies participation in the debate about whether there has been a radical cultural transformation in the world, particularly within Western societies, and if so, whether this has been good or bad. To define the postmodernism is not just to define a term. To define the postmodernism is not just to define a term. It is to characterize the present age and to assess how we should respond to it. I hope you have been able to understand that. So he says, Aran Gare, A-R-R-A-N, Aran Gare, G-A-R-E, Gare, the work Postmodernism and Environmental Crisis, he makes this statement that postmodernism signifies participation in the debate about whether there has been a radical cultural transformation in the world, particularly within the Western societies, and if so, whether this has been good or bad. To define postmodernism is not just to define a term, it is to characterize the present age and assess how we should respond to it. So this is the basic philosophy of the postmodernism. Now we have important postmodernists, particularly Foucault, Michael Foucault, Derrida, Lyotard, Lyotard, Hayden White, Barthes, Barthes, Barthes. So many of them, they have raised very, very significant questions about modernity. So here, in a way, postmodernism is reflecting on the results of modernity project claim that yes, because of the inventions, because of the many developments that are taking place in scientific field, the societies, human beings are developing. Now these people are questioning whether there is happiness in the world, whether there is progress in the world. Then what do you mean by the progress? Where is the happiness of human beings? All these serious issues have been raised by these postmodernist theoreticians, particularly Foucault, Derrida, Lyotard, Hayden White, who concentrated on meta history, then Barthes. So many of these people. Now, Lyotard, Lyotard, he characterizes postmodernism as, I quote him, the incredulity towards meta-narratives. The incredulity, INCREDULITY, the incredulity towards meta-narratives. They did not, rather he did not believe in the efficacy of meta-narratives. He did not believe in the claims of this meta-narrative truth unfolding or truth telling. He did not believe in that because he expressed doubts. The word incredulity, it denotes that he doubts it. Meta-narratives. Okay. So postmodernism believed that it is not possible for man to have absolute knowledge. So modernity claimed that man can have the absolute knowledge about the nature. He is able to decode the nature. But postmodernism, he says, postmodernists say that it is not possible for man to have absolute knowledge. Absolute knowledge concept itself is a myth. A myth. That's what he said. Now, these people, particularly Foucault and Derrida, they are very important for us. Foucault, starting from his first work, published in 1961, Madness and Civilization. He has a number of very interesting, Birth of Clinic, Birth of Prison, a number of works that Foucault has published. Difficult to enter for many. He writes knowledge and power. Knowledge and power. They are always interrelated. Knowledge is something that is produced under an authority. Authority for its legitimization, for its progress or the progress not in the sense that we use that, authority for its benefit rather. It controls the mechanism of knowledge production. So there, it is under a power structure, the knowledge is produced. Now, for example, insanity, the madness, how madness was defined in the earlier period. Madness, was taken to be not as a disease, not as something clinically abnormal. Madness earlier was a mad person was equated to the god. In a way, society was seeing a mad person not as a mad person, but a person who is the form of God. Devaru Manish. I mean, Devre Anal Bandidane. Devra Anal Idane. So God was seen as a manifestation in the person who now we call as the mad person. But slowly, the power structure, they started categorizing these things into different molds, different molds. So why the prison was created? Again, the concept of prison, it's a part of the knowledge creation, because they wanted the control over human beings. They wanted control over communities. So the prison was created. So here, the significant contribution of Michael Foucault is that knowledge is created under the power, or the power decides what is knowledge and what is not knowledge. And the power, it always makes use of knowledge as a tool for its advancement. Everything is a tool for the power structure. For example, now what's happening today, history has been used as one of the very powerful tools for the political hegemony of certain school of thinking, which are formed into a certain political party. So important for us to recognize here is that how knowledge has been used as a tool by the power structure for its own advantage, for its own legitimacy. Okay, so this is what Foucault very important, very emphatically writes about. Then I would come to Derrida. Derrida, he was mainly concerned with the post-structuralist view of language and society. For him, basically, language is not representational, it's always unstable. Language is always non-representational and unstable. That means whatever the person or the writer wants to communicate to the reader, that this is what I am trying to communicate, okay, the writer may not communicate that to the reader, because the reader may read that with a different understanding. He may gain or he may glean a different kind of an understanding, or he can make a different meaning of this particular writer. So what he is trying to say here is that language is always unstable, and it is never representation of the facts that the writer is trying to communicate to the reader. Secondly, he says there is no prior meaning to the writing. Meaning comes in only after your writing. There is nothing like there was a meaning prior to your writing. These are all very abstract and very interesting aspects that he tries to offer to us. Okay, so there is no prior meaning to writing. meaning becomes meaning, the word becomes a meaning only after it is written. Before writing, word does not have a meaning in itself. That's what he's trying to tell us. Once you use a particular word in a particular context, that word would give or would make a certain meaning. So prior to writing, it does not have the meaning, what he is trying to say. So therefore, since language does not have a stable character, then there is no stable meaning to what has been written. The meanings could be could change from reader to reader. The meaning could change. Now we may have our own experiences. If I read a book first time, I feel that I have understood in some fashion. If I read the same book again, I feel yes, something I missed out. Now I have understood. And if I make an attempt to read the book again for the third time, again I would feel that I didn't understand something when I read this work the earlier two times. Now I have been able to understand certain things accurately. So that way, every time the reader gets into the work, he makes a new meaning of the work. Then what does it mean? Where the problem lies? The language is always unstable. It's not stable. That's what the claim of Derrida. So he says no system of knowledge, whether philosophy, history, or science, can claim to discover the truth. No system of knowledge, whether philosophy, history, or science, can claim to discover the truth. Truth is always relative. See, now when we go to the modernist project or the period of modernity, then truth was absolute for them. Truth was absolute. When Einstein published the theory of relativity, then everything became relative. So that means I understand myself when I place myself, juxtapose myself with another human being. With the other, I can understand myself. Without the other, I cannot understand myself. These are all little, very abstract concepts, but we need to understand that, because he is making a very, very important statement. Without the other, I don't exist here. There is a very interesting statement. Before the whites entered Africa, there was no black. African became black only when the white entered over there. Before that, he was not black at all. How do we explain this? So here the issue is, I understand myself only in relation with the other. Another important thing, that what has been written, the intentions of the author is irrelevant. Author should forget that. There are lots of theories, particularly people from literary background, they know it quite well, that that whether we should go to understand the details, or whether we should know the details of the writer before we get into the work of that particular author, or should we approach the work without even knowing who the author is. There are two versions. There is a school which says, yes, it's better, it's always good if we know who the author is, how and where he grew, and if you know the background, then we would understand the work better. There's a claim. But the other claim is that no, once he's finished his work, he is no more he doesn't exist there. He no more exists there. So work is an independent and autonomous work. And within this autonomy, you have to understand what the work is offering, not what the person who wrote that had to say outside the text. So that way, Derrida, he brought in a very fundamental transformation in the way how one should get into the works of history, works of literature, works of art, and in every form. Now, for an artist, whatever he creates, the meaning that you make, it's within the art, and you have nothing to do with the artist who created that. So that is the level at which he tried to bring in a shift in the philosophical way of understanding epistemology, because ultimately postmodernism is trying to seriously interrogate certain fixed epistemological positions. Now there are other writers like Hayden White, who wrote meta history. Meta history here, actually, in a way, it is in defense of the history writing. Yes, history writing is able to, it gives the truth. Yes, it can lay hands on the truth. In meta history, because these postmodernists, these Derrida, Foucault, and Barthes, many of these people, they did not believe in this meta narratives, because for them history exists only in isolation. There is nothing like a truth is truth to all the people of all the continents, of all the areas. No, it's not like that. They don't believe in the unified history. They believe in the fragmented history of a particular region, or a particular society, or a particular people, or a community. It exists independently of the other histories. So they see in fragmentation. They never see history in the union. No, that's the reason why I told you they were against the generalization. What is applicable in the general sense may not be applicable to a particular group. So that's the way they always believed that history need to be understood in in the periphery context, not in the unified context, not taking a general. There is a general center, and everything is produced here, and all these laws are commonly applicable to every society, every individual, and every segment. No, they don't believe in that. So they believe only in the fragmentation. They never believed in the unified concept of history, or the general concept of history, or the generalized concept of history. Now, there are much more to that, and there are a number of other things that we can understand. But then I come to the last part of it. Now, what is the impact of postmodernism? What is the impact of the postmodernism? Number one, it has unsettled, totally disturbed the stereotype presentations of epistemological schools. I repeat that. Postmodernism has unsettled, disturbed the stereotype presentations and epistemological positions. Secondly, postmodernism is only a theory. Is only a theory. In certain sense, it is the reflection of the West by West itself. So what is that they have critiqued? What is that they have seriously interrogated? They have seriously interrogated their own modernist project. From where the modernist project emerged? It was in Europe, from Europe. So they were trying to critically interrogate the West. So in that sense, I would think postmodernism in a way is the West questioning the West. It's questioning its own earlier propositions. And thirdly, as already I told you, postmodernism does not believe in linear theory of history. It does not believe in the linear theory of history. I mean, it's neither linear nor cyclical. Linear history, yes, modernism, it started projecting that it's a linear, moving towards progress.
Hmm.
But then postmodernism, it did not believe in even in this linear theories. Another very significant thing of this postmodernist discourse is discipline boundaries are disturbed now. Discipline boundaries are disturbed now. What is the discipline? Earlier, we used to have, there is botany, zoology, then physics, then history, then economics. See, these are all the, discipline boundaries. But now, these boundaries have been disturbed. Now, if I want to write cultural history, can I write cultural history without understanding the economics of the period? Can I write cultural history without understanding the political power structure of a particular period? Can I write, cultural history without really understanding the philosophical, manifestations of certain period? I need to borrow from various disciplines. So in a way, a process of hybridization has started. A process of hybridization. What we call as interdisciplinary approach is nothing but the process of hybridization of the knowledge system. A process of the hybridization of the knowledge system. There are changes in every discipline every day. And all these changes have to be noticed. And all these changes which have been, dealt with in different disciplines will have to be integrated to develop my own understanding of a certain facets of history. Without bringing things from other disciplines, I cannot write history. Now, there are a number of new disciplines which have emerged, which is also a very significant thing that we need to understand. Earlier, there was no feminism. Now there is feminist studies. There was no lesbian studies earlier. Now we have lesbian studies. We have ethnic studies. We have tribal studies. We have urban studies. We have cultural studies. How many branches have been witnessed now? How many branches are coming up now? There are a number of branches still emerging. So every shift you would see new disciplines getting emerged. Boundaries are being shaken. Another important significant thing that the boundaries between social science and science is also narrowing. Now, if I want to write a book on the history of time, for example, if I want to write a book on history of time, how do I write without understanding, physics? What has been said in physics in terms of, time and space? So I can't write a history of time without, understanding the writings in physics. So the boundaries which had been demarcated as the strict, division marks do not exist now. In fact, now you must be seeing that in the recent decades, there is an increasing tendency towards multidisciplinary, pursuits in higher educational institutions. Multidisciplinary pursuits. Now, there are institutions where you can apt for mathematics, you can apt for history, you can apt for management. That forms a combination. You can't stop it. Earlier, it was not there. Earlier, PCMB means PCMB, PCB means PCB. HEPS, only HEPS. Now things have gone far beyond. And how they have gone far beyond? Why did they go far beyond? It's all because of the kind of changes that are happening in the epistemological pursuits, particularly from the Western societies, particularly from Western societies. And also, I must add one more thing here that generally we are not so much accustomed to or familiar with the theories. In our universities, we are more familiar with empiricism. Even to this day, across the universities, in my limited experience, which I have had in my career, interacting with people from other universities, both in South and also partly in North, I have not seen people so much concerned about the theoretical, debates. Most universities are offering only empiricism-based, history. Our history is taught even to this day, in the empirical model, not on the theoretical model. Somehow our minds are not so, happy with, understanding theories. Theory means no, we are not interested. Empiricism, yes, we are interested. We are more interested in collection of the data, but the data does not speak for itself. We need to speak to the data to speak to us, which finally gets formulated into certain theoretical understanding. Now, the major defect what I find in most of our research works is the absence of theoretical framework. And you may be surprised to know, even to this day, deconstruction, postmodernism, though most of these works have been done only by literatures. Most of these the theories, they're all literatures, I understand. But they have very significant connection to history. But we have not been able to take them into our study ambience. We have not been able to take them into our study structure. What does it tell? And please understand, it's already 50 years over after the postmodernism emerged. It emerged in 1960s, and now 50 years are over. Still, most universities have not been able to take them into their study structure. Particularly, I'm talking about social sciences. In literature, it may be happening. I don't know. I'm aware that it's happening in literature, at least in some universities. And there are few individuals who are seriously concerned about this theoretical understanding. But as far as social sciences are concerned, these things are not really happening. Somewhere, we have stopped at Marxism, or up to we have come up to subaltern studies. Subaltern studies, which started taking place in 1980s. We have come to subaltern studies. Somehow we have not been so much conversant with the postmodern, post-structural, theoretical understanding. I think for every student, whether it's a science student or a student of humanities or a student of social science, it is very, very important that we need to, get into the philosophical chemistry, or an epistemological, stances of these various theoreticians, which would really help us to broaden, enlighten our view of human beings, human society, maybe our own self. So finally, I come back to my earlier statement that thesis means what he said. Thesis, very book thesis, sir. Whether it should be taken as a joke or a serious concern, I leave it to the audience. I thank the principal and the teaching fraternity of Government First Aid College, Vijayanagara, for having given me this honor and this time for me. And I also thank all the participants to have given me this wonderful time of yours. Thank you, and I thank you again.
So now, delegates can you can clear your doubts. Sir is there to answer them you all. Meanwhile, I welcome Usha ma'am, who has joined the session. Welcome you, ma'am. So delegates, you can.
Dear delegates, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand. We will unmute you, and or else you can post it in the chat box. We will read it to the sir.
Sir, I have a question with regard. So we had the control of the church, sir, during the Renaissance period, church control, and few of the writers, as you mentioned, Voltaire, Montesquieu, Gibbon, they were all humanists. They fought for the freedom of speech. And again, coming back to the postmodern, you were saying again the power was controlled by power structure. Was it government or ideology, sir?
Now, here power means it is the political power.
Okay.
The political power.
In the sense something communist or
political power means need not be only the government.
Okay.
There are many agencies which are associated with the government.
Okay.
Now, if we think that only the government is having power, no, it's not that way. Power is exercised by various other communities or in various other ways. Okay, by different groups. There are pressure groups, for example. Okay. So that is also one kind of power. And you know this business community, particularly the industries. See, they are not in the government. They are not in the government, but they are in a way the face of the government. In some other informal way, they are also the face of the government because they condition, control, they influence the formulation of the policies by the government.
Okay. Political. Okay, sir. Capitalism and things like that. Okay, sir. So any doubts, delegates, you can ask, sir. So as it is chart, sir. Sir, again, so why this transformation? They opposed the church, they gave liberalist thoughts. Again, control, as you told, West only questions the West.
Yeah, this is in reference to postmodernism I was telling. Modernism as a concept, it was developed by the West. You know that.
Yes.
Now, postmodernists, who they are questioning? They are questioning the very philosophical foundation of the modernity claims.
Okay.
So they are questioning from the earlier, philosophical foundations. So West questioning itself.
West questioning West. Okay.
Yes.
So very enlightening.
So you told about the cyclic and vertical history. Something we were talking about, sir.
The cyclical and and linear history.
Yes, linear, sir.
Linear means it's just progressing in a very constant way, moving without any upheavals.
Yes, sir.
But history is not that way. Things are normal today. Tomorrow there might be some revolution. You never know that. Tomorrow there might be a war. Suddenly there is a change.
Yes.
We never know. Tomorrow anything can happen. This evening anything can happen. Who predicted this pandemic now?
That's true, sir.
This pandemic, it has changed the very perception of human beings. It has changed the very lifestyle of the people.
Yes.
You never knew that. So linearity is disturbed now. Linearity moving this way constantly, but that is disturbed now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So there is one question from Anjanaya Reddy. Any views that postmodernism affect education, especially regard to NEP, New Education Policy?
New educational policy.
Yes, sir.
Please read the question again.
Any views that postmodernism affect education, especially regard to NEP?
Any views? The emphasis of new educational policy is slightly towards the multidisciplinary model that is there. That multidisciplinary model is there. So if you take that as a reference point, to that extent, yes, they have also taken certain things from this thought process, the postmodernist thought process. Now, when there is a multidisciplinary approach, I told you that postmodernism brought in new ways of understanding things, which resulted in the emergence of many other knowledge systems or the branches of studies like feminism, lesbian studies, tribal studies, cultural studies. So to that extent, yes, the disciplinary approach is something in a way could be the contribution of the postmodernist thought.
Thank you, sir. The session was very informative, sir. Rekha, madam?
Yes. So, very informative thoughts that you gave us. Hope many of them will pursue their PhD in this particular topic. I wasn't knowing about these things, sir, or else even I would have thought over this. A very interesting session from how the West changes from the Renaissance down till the modern era. How that's very, very interesting, sir. And it is thought-provoking and valuable insights that you have given, sir. Your scholarly thoughts will take us ahead. We will try to know more about it, read more about this particular session, sir. So now I request Dr. Mangala, Department of Economics, to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, Rekha madam. Good morning, one and all. Myself, Dr. Mangalati, Assistant Professor in Economics, is here with you to propose vote of thanks on the 5th day of our FDP, conducted by Humanities Forum, Government First Grade College, Vijayanagara, Bengaluru. Research has become an integral part of our pedagogy. Research in humanities contributed in the form of various policies, recommendations in various committees, which have in turn contributed to the upliftment of human life. By acknowledging this very purpose, the 7 days FDP on contemporary research methodologies in social sciences, organized by our college, has the same objective to address with. Respected resource person of today's session, delegates and organizers, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all who are directly or indirectly contributed for the success of this session. With great pleasure, I would like to thank Dr. Ashwath Narayana sir, Professor of History, Bangalore University, Bangalore, for giving an insightful and thought-provoking views on the topic history and postmodernism. On behalf of the organizing committee and our college, I thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to convey our deep sense of gratitude to our beloved principal, sir, Dr. Chandrasekhar Rabi, chief patron of this program, who always would like to keep the institution and its faculty growth-oriented. Thank you very much, sir. I thank Dr. Shubha Madam, IQAC coordinator of our college and head of the Department of Botany, for her constant support in conducting such academic programs. Thank you, Madam. I wish to thank organizing secretaries of this 7 days FDP program, Dr. Shamala B., Associate Professor and PG Coordinator, Department of Economics, and Professor Hemalata SK, Assistant Professor, Department of English. Thank you, madams. I thank Professor Shailaja Madam, Convener of Humanities Forum and Head of the Department of Economics, and also Dr. Suma B.U. Madam, Associate Professor of Kannada, for their guidance and encouragement in conducting this program. Thank you, madams. We express our deep sense of gratitude to all of our delegates, friends, and colleagues for their active participation in this session. I would like to thank Dr. Smita M. Bhavikatti, Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of History, for coordinating this session. Thank you, Smita Madam. I thank Professor Rekha HG for her wonderful comparing in today's session. Thank you, Rekha Madam. With great pleasure, I would like to express our sincere thanks to all the conveners of this FDP program, HODs of all departments of humanities, members of the organizing committee, and the members of technical committee. Thank you all. I thank teaching faculty of arts, science, commerce, and management departments, and non-teaching staff of our college for joining their hands together in the success of this session. Once again, I thank you one and all, and over to you, Rekha Madam.
So, thank you, Mangala, for proposing the vote of thanks. So, thank you one and all. Shamala Madam, anything to say?
Yes, sir, thank you so much. Actually, your presentation did not allow us to move a bit from the places where we were sitting. It was so informative, and the way you were interpreting the things that has happened in history, and the vagueness and the abstractness of the subject, and yet which plays its role, in the contemporary issues. That was wonderful, sir. So thank you so much for giving us or enlightening us about this topic, which we would otherwise wouldn't have studied, because we don't belong to history and we don't study. It was really enlightening. Thank you so much, sir. It was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Shamla ma'am, can we end the yes, sir.
Yes.
Can we end the meeting now?
Yes, Smita, you can.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dear
That was
viewers,
wonderful. Both of you did a very good job. Congratulations to the Department of History. Yeah, you can wind up the thing. And thanks to Hema Madam too.
Dear delegates, tomorrow join at 10:30. We'll be having another session. Thank you.